All right. Well, good morning and welcome to the third annual Transfer Summit between Salt Lake Community College and the University of Utah. And happy Friday. And thanks for joining us on the Friday before both of our spring breaks. We appreciate your time today and that you've made time to come and listen and learn and talk about our institutional partnership and the work that we do on behalf of our students and transfer students. So my name is Jason Taylor. I'm the Director of Transfer Pathways in the Office of Undergraduate Studies. And I'll turn it over to my colleague at Salt Lake Community College, who is my collaborator in planning this event.
Aloha, everybody. My name is Leilani Clegg. I am the director for the University Transfer Center at Salt Lake Community College, and I'm so excited for my first but third annual Transfer Summit with the University of Utah. So Jason and I have had a fun time putting this together, and welcome everyone. And as he mentioned, I'm so excited to have you here with us before the spring break kicks off. So welcome again, and back to Jason.
Great. So before we get started with the program, we want to share a few logistical items and introduce sort of the format and purpose of the summit. So logistics, you all made it here, which means presumably you found the agenda on the website. So all of the links, Zoom links and information about the summit is embedded in the agenda on the website. So we're in a webinar format for the first part of the morning, which includes a welcome by both of our presidents, an update on some of our work related to transfer pathways, and probably the highlight of the summit, which is our transfer student panel. After that, we'll transition to two concurrent sessions where you have the choice to attend a session that interests you most. And those concurrent sessions are in sort of a traditional Zoom meeting format. So we just ask that you mute yourself during the presentation. And most presentations will have an opportunity for Q&A or feedback. So the presenters will prompt you to engage based on their presentation. We have a short break between the first and second concurrent session. So get up, stretch your legs, and enjoy a break. After the concurrent sessions, we'll reconvene in this main Zoom room in the webinar format. So you can just click the link on the agenda, and you'll find your way back to this webinar format where we'll hear from some of our academic leaders from both institutions, Rachel Lewis and Chase Haygood, to reflect on the day and share some updates and wrap up our morning. All of the sessions are going to be recorded, and we'll post them to the website, and we'll share that with our campus communities when they're available. So as we launch into the day, we just want to briefly share a note about the purpose of the summit and really sort of what brings us together today. So the first transfer summit was in the fall, right before COVID. And as we all know, the last 2 years have been very challenging in profound ways, but we've really maintained some momentum as it relates to our institutional partnership. We've had changes at both of our institutions, and we're really thrilled to continue to receive support from our institutional leadership and in ways that support our collaboration and partnership. In this summit, I think, is a reflection of that support and partnership. And the summit offers another opportunity for our campuses to really convene and celebrate our shared work and partnership, and to really continue our efforts to better support transfer students from an academic and a co-curricular perspective. So the agenda for this morning has some similar features to prior summits, but a unique feature of this year's summit is that many of the sessions feature joint presentations from both Salt Lake Community College and University of Utah faculty and staff. And so these sessions are intended to both educate our campus communities about transfer-related work across academic units and student service units, and to highlight the value of our collaborative work. So Leilani and I hope you find value in and learn from today's summit, and we'll be collecting your feedback at the end of the summit to ensure that we can continue to offer meaningful programming each year. And as Leilani said, we really fully expect to be back in person next year. So we're looking forward to the opportunity to convene in person. So with that, it's my pleasure to welcome both of our presidents and introduce SLCC's President Denise Huftelin and University of Utah's President Taylor Randall. We're excited that you both can join us this morning to welcome everyone to the summit and offer some introductory comments and updates as we begin the day. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, to both of you, and I think President Huftelin is kicking us off.
Great. Thank you so much, Jason. It's a pleasure to be with you all. And I want to thank Jason and Leilani and Chase and Rachel and the amazing teams behind this day. It takes a lot of work, not just the continual work that we're doing to improve things, but just to plan this summit takes another kind of whole event planning mode. So thank you to those of you that were behind the scenes planning this event. I'm thrilled to be with you this morning, and I'm especially thrilled to be able to be doing this for the first time with President Randall as a great new colleague. And those of you that have been with us all three summits know that I have, as president at Salt Lake Community College, enjoyed a remarkable partnership with President Randall, and prior to him, President Watkins, and prior to her, President Pershing. So I've been in my role long enough to have three colleagues at the U, all of whom have stepped up to really understand the importance of working together and how much stronger we can be together. So I'm thrilled to be part of the panel or this summit again and share some words here in a moment, but mostly just want to welcome President Randall and thank him and Chase and all of those of you that might be a bit new in your roles for taking the mantle and moving quickly without any pause on these great partnerships. So President Randall, thank you to you and to those before you that have set such a lovely foundation.
Thank you, President Huftelin. Thanks for that incredibly generous welcome. I want to welcome all of the faculty and staff from both institutions. This is an amazing event, I guess, for the third year in a row that kind of reaffirms the partnership and the importance of the partnership between Salt Lake Community College and the University of Utah. You are our most important collaboration that we have here at the University of Utah. In any given year, 45% of all of our transfer students come from Salt Lake Community College. And quite frankly, I'd like to challenge this group to make that even higher. We as presidents talk very, very frequently, and we're committed to that action. And I think every time we get together, we get excited about the possibilities of further and deeper collaboration between the two institutions. If you think about what the system of higher education is trying to do in terms of increasing access to education, if you look at where the demographics of our state are going, the power of a collaboration between our two institutions is really quite compelling. There are capabilities and skills that Salt Lake Community College has that we just simply do not have at the University of Utah, and are probably best allowing Salt Lake Community College to be the excellence in that area in terms of developing talent that can come to the University of Utah. At the same time, I think what I hope we bring to this partnership is a willingness and a commitment to create strong paths and to try to revolutionize, in some sense, the student experience for transfers so that they feel like it is seamless and that they feel like they can immediately find an identity at our university as they may choose us to move on to finish off their education. We are simply stronger together. I think it's very hard to argue against that. And I'm personally very excited to see what we can do together in the future. So thank you for allowing me to be here for a few minutes.
And I might just jump in. I just wanted to kind of comment a little bit more on some of the partnerships we've done to date that are new and bold and exciting, and some of the ideas we have for the future. Before I do that, whoever is responsible for this logo, this new connected logo that I'm looking at, I think it's brilliant. And I just want to share that part of what I'm hoping we can do together is start to, in some ways, brand ourselves like this as partners so that folks in the Salt Lake County service area don't see us as two different institutions that they choose from, but to see us as two institutions that are working together to create an educational pathway for all of our Salt Lake County residents. And I think this is a lovely kind of icon that just shows that we're together under these beautiful mountains working in partnership. So, you know, one of our ideas is to think all Salt Lake County folks just know that Salt Lake Community College and the University of Utah are invested in their educational future. And we're working together to make that financially accessible, academically accessible, geographically accessible, to really strengthen really the citizenry of Salt Lake County and the state, but also obviously the workforce and the economic growth and development that our county and our state needs. So bravo to the icon graphic folks. The other thing I will just share is we had a wonderful meeting with our joint board of trustees, executive committees, I don't know, maybe 4 months ago or so, last fall. And their excitement in coming together as board members who have great influence and great ideas and understand the missions of both institutions. The energy in that room was really palpable. And we have really committed volunteer citizens who govern our organizations that I think will also prove to be very helpful to us, not just making connections. It's not just students making connections on campus and faculty making connections, but it's also business leaders and legislators and philanthropists recognizing that we can work together in even better ways, as President Randall just said. So whether it's our new Harriman building that's coming out of the ground right now, we're so excited about, and we're starting to create infrastructure to make that even stronger. Whether it's looking in the next 20 years or 30 years at that 90 acres that's sitting out there in Harriman, and what more can we do together in that space? Or whether it's looking at the West Valley project and what the needs are in our West Side communities in terms of access to all different kinds of education. I just think it's a really exciting time, and I think that we should celebrate the work that's been done to date. I've been at the college for almost 30 years. I've been president since 2014, and never before have I seen the kind of system work supported by the system. Our transfer council is doing remarkable work. They're coming together and they're making decisions that are really student-centric. I've not seen our faculty work as closely. We've just got remarkable articulation and models now that we didn't have before, or that have come and gone and not been codified. And certainly we're starting to even think, as Dr. Taylor mentioned, about co-curricular pathways. And how do you take someone who's had a really great community experience at Salt Lake Community College and put them in a new community at the U that feels just as warm and just as inviting and just as a sense of belonging in community. So I just think it's, we've got lots of cool things in the works, and we've got a lot of support. And I hope you all are feeling that energy and that support from us as well. I would just invite, if there are conversations that occur today that are new and interesting and need to have some development and thought, you know, I think both President Randall and I are open to ideas and new thinking, and happy to be part of this kind of growing and kind of iterative process, as long as we're making things better for students. And I will just say, I'm so happy to see Emily Alzamora on the student panel. We have thousands of students that come to you every year that are very successful and remarkable leaders, but we've had the great fortune of having several shining stars who emerge from our student leadership here and come into the U and blossom there even more. And I just love to see the specific students and the trajectory that they are on. So it's great. It's just great. Those are some other comments there.
You know, when I was dean at the business school, I spent a lot of time on the road fundraising and trying to get alumni energized about the school. And one of the most, I think, interesting first trips I ever took was to New York City and Wall Street. And I visited in a single day with, I think it was about 5 alums, and just, you know, it's so fun to sit down and ask them, boy, how did you get to Wall Street, the pinnacle of finance? And 2 of those 5 had actually been transfer students from Salt Lake Community College, and had then found their way to Wall Street after getting a finance degree from our business school. So I think that's, again, just a great example of the success that we can have if we work together. These two individuals were individuals that actually had not thought they would ever go to college. And one has since, I think now lives in the Bay Area and is doing extraordinarily well, but it's just amazing. I think what we can do together. I took a drive through the valley about 2 weeks ago and went past the Harriman campus. It's exciting to see the cranes and see it all coming out of the ground. It's even more exciting to start hearing about the programming that you're doing there. And I think we've got immense opportunity for growth in the south end of Salt Lake Valley with that property. Some of you may or may not know, we also have another large collaboration. And I think yesterday the bonding package was passed for a hospital that we will be building in West Valley. But I think the dream of our institution and also Salt Lake Community College is that's actually not just a hospital. It's a way that we can actually work together to take both healthcare and higher education to partner with the community to help it realize its dreams. I'll give you the reason why healthcare wanted to put a hospital up out there. And that was because if you look at lifespans of individuals in those zip codes, they often live 7 to 10 years less than the rest of us. So it's almost a healthcare desert. There's also a lot of folks that basically have to drive to our facilities. There's 12 million miles driven between West Valley and the hospital on our campus. But as we dug deeper into that community, we also realized that was an area where there was much less educational attainment, whether it was completing high school or even advancing onto college or certificates or any type of specialized education that would help them kind of form careers. And so I think the promise there is one that's just like the promise at Harriman, where we can go in together. And there's actually, I think, a little more direct tie to immediate employment in that our hospital is going to be employing 1,400 new employees. And we would love for most of them to come from that community, hopefully with the goal of actually increasing socioeconomic outcomes as well as the health outcomes. As we've begun to put our two programs, our health programs together, we realize the complementarities there are just incredible. And here's a chance for us to articulate curriculum to build stackable credentials and create work all at the same time. And so West Valley will be a little bit different, right, than Harriman. But I think what you all are doing here today is laying the groundwork. I don't think you should underestimate the power of relationships and the ability to work together to solve problems. That is kind of what we have to do in this new educational environment. It's changing so fast that we've got to be creative. We got to think of ways to make students and our institutions successful. We often, as large organizations, like to set rules and processes. I hope as you do that, you always remember that the goal is just to try to get a student through our institutions and into productive work life. And any systems that we set up ought to be able to do that, to provide access. I've said this, I believe, on this call before, but when I first started as an administrator, I asked for a list of 100 people that we had accepted to our institution and had not shown up. And many of them, right, were individuals who couldn't navigate the bureaucracy of at least my institution. And that was really sad to me because it wasn't like they were anywhere else. They were just not in school. And so I think if we can focus particularly on the student and how they view the way we work together and keep that in mind, I think that's, to me, the number one guiding principle of kind of how we work together. So I'll end my little speech with that. How's that?
And Jason, can I just say one closing thing maybe, and before we turn the time back to you, and I should have said this earlier, but last week we had a college-wide gathering. We call it SLCC 360, and every year we gather to kind of look at our strategic plan and where are we and look at the metrics. And the theme this year was the idea that we are an emerging Hispanic serving institution. And we recognize that to really serve Latinx students, you don't just have a certain number that are on your campus, you actually transform curriculum and spaces and processes and thinking to be more Latinx understanding and centric, and create spaces where those students really feel like we've listened and they belong. So as you're talking together, those students who we are serving, we're almost at about, you have to be at 25% of Latinx FTE in order to get this designation. We're about 23%, so it's within reach. And those students are going to be transferring and should be transferring. So that as you start to think about curriculum and articulation and co-curricular spaces, this idea of Latinx serving and HSIs and what does that mean, that should probably be infused across your conversations as well. So I would just maybe create that little challenge to think through, what does that mean? How do we learn more about that, and how do we respond together?
I love that, Denise. By the way, on our strategic plan, that is also a common, I think, goal that we share. We ultimately see ourselves becoming an HSI, in good part because of the great work that you all are doing. We will lag you by a few years, but hope that many of those students come to the University of Utah.
Thank you, Leilani and Jason, for the invitation to join you, and I hope you have a great day.
Great, thank you so much. We appreciate you both. Thank you, President Heftelin and President Randall, for joining us today and welcoming and sharing all that great news. Such good things are happening, and it's exciting to be a part of it. So again, thank you and have a great spring break. All right, everyone. We are going to move right into the next part of our session. And before we move over to the concurrent sessions that Jason mentioned, he and I just want to go over a few things and talk more in regard to just some of the work that's already been done. But before we go there, I just want to introduce you all. Those that are new, like I am this year, I want to welcome Jason Taylor to speak with you, because he's been a part of this great work that's been done and a lot of the previous summits that have happened already. And so I want to make sure that to acknowledge all the hard work that he has done and the predecessors before myself here at Salt Lake Community College, all the work that they've done to get us to where we're at now and how we can proceed forward. So I wanted to turn that time over to Jason to talk about those things and kick us off from there.
Thanks, Leilani. And this is I'm inspired by our president's comment, so thanks to both of them as well. As Leilani noted, we wanted to share a few updates about what we've been doing and where we're going with transfer pathways. And before we do that, we want to share some high-level data on transfer students between our institutions that really emphasizes the relevance and importance of our institutional relationship. And many of you may be familiar with some of these data, but on an annual basis, we have about 700 to 800 Salt Lake Community College transfer students, students that transfer from Salt Lake Community College to the University of Utah. And as President Randall mentioned, you can see in this chart, that represents about 40 to 45% of all new transfer students to the University of Utah. It sort of varies depending on the year, but we've pretty consistently about 4 in 10 transfer students are coming from Salt Lake Community College. So in other words, Salt Lake Community College students are future University of Utah students, and University of Utah students are former Salt Lake Community College students, as I think both presidents sort of illustrated in their remarks. So our institutions share so many students, and the efforts that we all engage in to support transfer students really boosts our individual and collective success at our institutions. I think, we're stronger together, as one of our presidents said. So we're really pleased to be investing in the work in our partnership and our transfer work. So a reminder that we share so many students, which is why we're here today. And speaking of success, we how successful are our transfer students from Salt Lake Community College? We've been asking this question, and we've got some new data that we're sharing, and we have a lot to celebrate as a partnership. Because when we look at our graduation rates of our students transferring in from Salt Lake Community College, we see two important trends. So the first is that the 6-year bachelor's degree graduation rates are higher for Salt Lake Community College transfer students compared to students who transfer into the University of Utah from other institutions. And second is that, and you can see clearly there's a trend here, the bachelor's degree completion rates of Salt Lake Community College transfer students continue to rise over time. They're moving up. And I think both of these, Leilani and I have had a chance to look at this and think about this together. And both of these trends speak to really a long history of collaboration and success between our institutions in a way that supports students on their pathways to graduation. And we really should all celebrate this success. We can also see from these data that, a bachelor's degree graduation rate of 77%, 6 years after transferring to the University of Utah means that we have some room for improvement. So we're here today in part to affirm our commitment to our partnership and the work that we need to do to improve our success of our students moving between our two institutions. And we are, part of our work in the forthcoming year is to continue to sort of mine our data to better understand our students who are moving between our two institutions and what influences their success. And as this work unfolds, we'll be sharing it and engaging our campus communities in the data. So with that, we want to just briefly share and summarize sort of what we've been working on. And many of you may be familiar with this. So summarize what we've been working on and share a little bit about what are our plans moving forward. So since 2019, both of our institutions have been collaborating to develop and strengthen articulation agreements at the program or discipline level and to create 4 and 5 year plans for students who want to transfer between our two institutions. And this slide sort of summarizes the broad objectives for our work to create academic transfer pathways between our institutions. What have we accomplished to date? In 2018-19, we began collecting existing articulation agreements and sort of cementing many of the existing course articulations at the program level by creating articulation agreements. And then in 2020, we enlisted 18 programs and offered some structured workshops and webinars to help develop and improve our agreements and to create clear 4-year and 5-year plans that map out the sequence of courses from Salt Lake Community College to the University of Utah, where students can complete an associate's degree along the way at Salt Lake Community College and complete a bachelor's degree at the University of Utah. So the 4-year and 5-year plans are really a map to show how a student can complete a sequence of courses in 4 to 5 years between our two institutions. And we've completed this work with most of the 18 programs. And then in 2021, we engaged another 13 programs to work on articulation agreement and 4 to 5 year plans. And this work is currently underway and still in progress. All of our completed agreements are signed, our articulation agreements are signed and are maintained by both institutions. So that's sort of where we've been, and I'm going to pitch it back over to Leilani, who's going to talk a little bit about some of our plans moving forward.
All right, so I'm just going to ask Jason to kind of leave this up just because really the 4 to 5 year plans that have been started are what's going to continue. And so we are excited to continue that work, not with just the ones that we have, but those that we have been working on and expanding on new programs and those that are just being introduced. So as we start new programs, we're actually starting them out with 4 to 5 year plans in place as a part of the articulation work being done. So exciting things that are happening. And at that point, I wanted to just introduce that we do have a new member of our team, a new articulation coordinator, Nicole Stott. And we have had a little bit of technical problem this morning, so I don't know if she'll be able to pop in, but if she is, that would be great. But she is a new person at Salt Lake Community College, very new in the last 6 weeks, in fact. And she'll be doing a lot of this amazing work and working with the faculty and with our academic advisors on both ends to make sure that not only is the articulation in place and the 5-year plans developed, but as we move forward, it makes sense for our students and that we start to house it online in places and spaces where it's accessible, that it make the pathway is clear, and that as they trend forward, they can follow a really clear thread of what needs to happen and how those courses come together for them as a student. So those works that are happening with articulation also bleed into the things that you'll learn later today and some of the other sessions, but how academic advising may be helping our students as well to see the clear path right up to the point at the initial stage of a student starting here, and their whole dream was to be a University of Utah student. And so engaging them from orientation to orientation at the U and how that looks. So all kinds of things that we're going to discuss later today are all part of the plan, but it takes all of us in every department to work through those plans and those phases. So the outreach to students is part of the program that we're putting together now and moving forward on. And so part of what I was going to just explain or share is that Jason mentioned there are 13 programs that are also now looking at the 4- and 5-year plans and adding those. We will again be reaching out through faculty that are already kind of engaging with us to ask about new programs and working through those and getting that done. So next year at our next summit, we'll be sharing that and hopefully have more information to show what's happened since the start of these plans to see how it's all worked out. So we should be at 4 years for some of those. That's kind of exciting to be able to see and share. So on that being said, I'm just going to throw it back over to you, Jason, and talk about next steps.
Yeah. So moving forward, in undergraduate studies, we'll be partnering with Leilani and the Provost Office at Salt Lake Community College to continue to support opportunities for SLCC and U of U faculty and advisors to engage at the discipline level or the program level to create and update agreements and plans. And we're really thinking about how to do this in a way that makes sense for both of our institutions and do it systematically. We've offered workshops in the past, and COVID, of course, has sort of disrupted some things, but we're creating some plans for the future, and as part of our assessment, will be at the end of this event, we'll be asking you for some feedback. So
all right.
And then, Leilani, I'll just mention the other thing that we're thinking about is developing a process whereby we regularly review existing articulation agreements and our 4- to 5-year plans to make sure they're updated based on changes to existing curricula or additions, new courses or programs that come online, that we're just we sort of have a process that both of our institutions are engaged in efficiently, of course, but that we ensure we're maintaining updated and accurate agreements and plans. So for those programs and units that have developed agreements and plans, look for some more information about that in the coming months as well. So
great. So the Transfer Center itself with Salt Lake Community College has put in a lot of time to as well change the look and feel of it, and trying to be more inviting and not just be the center located here at the college space at the Taylorsville campus, but campus-wide, so all throughout all of our campus locations, by inviting the University of Utah to be more visible. And so again, if you attend our admissions and registration session later, you'll hear a little more detail on that, but a lot of that outreach is also a part of this plan, just to make sure that the University of Utah and Salt Lake Community College partnership is very clear to our students and how their pathway can lead them in the direction to the U.
great. So I think those are the updates that we wanted to share with you. And again, at the end of the summit, we'll have some specific questions embedded in the assessment that you all will receive. We're going to be asking for your feedback, how we can support you, and how we can connect faculty and staff from both institutions as you develop academic transfer pathways, or support you in other ways to collaborate with your colleagues and counterparts between our two institutions. So with that, Leilani, I think we get to transition to the highlight and the best part of today's agenda, which is the transfer student panel. So with that, I'm going to ask our transfer students and our moderator to turn their videos on as we welcome you all to the summit. We always learn so much from hearing directly from our students, and I'm glad that our presidents really emphasize that we need to have sort of a student first approach as we think about our work. And so I'm going to welcome our three outstanding transfer student panelists who will introduce themselves during their introduction, and I'll welcome our moderator, Dr. Paul Fisk, who's the Assistant Director for the Office of Orientation and Transition at the University of Utah. So we have about 50 minutes, and I think we'll have time for Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have questions that come up along the way, please use the Q&A function in the webinar to enter those questions and for the students, and we look forward to the conversation. So with that, we'll turn it over to you, Paul and the students.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taylor. So we're really excited. We have a great group of students. I'll ask them all questions. And again, like Dr. Taylor said, we'll have some time to answer questions at the end. So I'd like to start out with all the students so that they could give an introduction with their name, their pronouns, their major, where they're at currently as an institution, and some highlights of their involvement and experience at Salt Lake Community College. So Emily, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Hernandez Alzamora. I transferred from Salt Lake Community College 2021, and my pronouns are she, her, hers, and my major that I am currently into is business management. So currently at the University of Utah, I work as a teacher assistant for B Corps 2030, which is essentially management statistics. I'm involved in a couple of other things. I'm a mentee for the Crimson Transfer Mentorship Program. I also recently got into the Crimson Transfer Honor Society. I'm also involved with Opportunity Scholars, and I am involved in Business Transfer Scholars. A couple of things before that, before I transferred to the University of Utah, I was involved in Salt Lake Community College. My first year, I was a student ambassador, so I worked with a lot of high school students, talking to them about higher education, opportunities that they have, scholarships that they can apply for. And then my second year, I actually was a student association president for Salt Lake Community College. And so I had the opportunity to work with President Denise Heftelin for a year and her amazing executive council, just seeing how we can make the experience better for our students at Salt Lake Community College. So.
Thank you, Emily. Brittany, can you go next?
Hi, everybody. My name is Brittany Lolohea. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I'm a senior at the University of Utah, majoring in psychology and sociology and minoring in human development and family studies. I'm also completing the Applied Positive Psychology Certificate and Criminology Certificate offered through the University of Utah. I'm a mother of three. I actually graduated from Salt Lake Community College in the fall of 2012. And so I took an 8-year break before reapplying last spring in 2021. I'm also an Opportunity Scholar, and I was a Crimson mentee, and then I am currently a Crimson mentor out of the Office of Orientation and Transition.
Thank you, Brittany. Will, you want to go next?
All right. Hi, my name is Will Little. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm an anthropology major and an integrated human biology minor. I transferred here from SLIC in the spring of 2020. I was also a mentee and now I'm a Crimson mentor. I'm super involved with Special Olympics and they actually asked me to start a team at the U. So I've got to do that and that's been really great.
Thank you all for sharing. So for our first question, when did you know that you wanted to transfer to the University of Utah? And how did you start the process of transferring to the U of U? Brittany, you want to start us off?
So during my last semester at SLIC, I knew I wanted to transfer to the University of Utah because higher education is very important to me. And I wanted to continue my education knowing I needed to build a resume for a good job in a competitive job market. I started the process by going to the University of Utah homepage to apply for admission as a transfer student.
Thank you. Emily, you want to go next?
Yeah. So actually I've always known that I wanted to go to the University of Utah since I was like 4th, 5th grade. So this was something that I've been working towards. I actually started off at SLIC mostly because of financial reasons. It just financially made sense for me personally. And so what I just did, I just worked a lot with my advisor. So that way I made sure that all my classes aligned with what I needed to transfer to the University of Utah.
Thank you. And Will?
So for me, I would eventually like to be a physician assistant, and the U has, I think it's the #4 PA program in the nation. So I had always wanted to go there too, and so that kind of aligned really well. And my last semester at SLIC, I kind of looked at the PA program requirements at the U and kind of worked back from there.
Thank you all. So for the next question, kind of as you were figuring out how to transfer to the U, who did you seek information from and who helped you? And since you kind of started that, Will, would you mind going first?
Yeah, so I was in the advising office a lot at SLIC because I like to really plan things out. And I'm terrible with names, so I can't remember specifically names, but everybody at SLIC was super helpful with, helping me plan out specifically what I needed to do and sitting down with me and going through everything.
Thank you. Brittany, do you feel good to go?
So during my transfer process to the U, I was constantly calling like the Office of Admissions to make sure that it was everything that I needed so that my case was ready to be reviewed and to see that I was accepted into the university. And I also received help from the Office of Scholarships and Financial Aid, assisting with questions with financial aid, grants, scholarships, and loans.
Thank you, Brittany. Emily?
Yeah, so the I actually was really fortunate and had amazing people that was helping me along, like figuring out how to work with school. And Leilani Clegg actually introduced me to an advisor at Salt Lake Community College that was a previous business advisor up at the U. And so it was really nice because her experience helped me coordinate the classes that I needed to graduate, not only from SLIC, but also requirements that I would need for the U as well. I also had the opportunity to talk with Paul Fisk as he helped me transition from SLIC to the University of Utah. So he helped me mostly figure out like what my GPA has to be at, like things that I should be considering in terms of like involvement, scholarships, and things like that.
You don't need to thank me because I'm the moderator. So if there anything that wasn't helpful, you can also feel free to share. So as you think back to your last semester at Salt Lake Community College or right before you transferred to the U of U, how were you feeling as you were about to transfer? And what were you doing to help you prepare? So a lot about like, what was the feeling like? What kind of state were you in? Will, do you want to go?
Sure. So I was super excited to transfer to the U, but also kind of nervous because, I'd taken tours up there in high school and everything, and it was just a big, it's a big difference from Slick in terms of kind of the ambiance, because everybody knows each other a little better, I think. So coming into that, kind of halfway through the college career was definitely a new experience. And the summer before my first semester, I looked up my class schedule, and then I went and visited and walked, kind of figured out a little map to all my classes. And I meticulously planned out my train schedule so I could get there and then have, a few minutes of walking time. So.
Thank you, Will. Emily, you want to go?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with Will. I was really excited and nervous at the same time. Like, it was exciting for me mostly because like at my last semester, like I graduated and I had my degree in my hand, and like from my family, like being the first one, that was just like an overwhelming experience. Was like, like, yeah, I got my first degree, now I'm gonna get my second one. And so then I like started to become nervous because I was like, shoot, like I'm, like Will said, like you're coming halfway through someone's like 4-year thing, so you're kind of like, you're brand new, you're like, I'm gonna try to talk to people, and then it's awkward because then they're like, yeah, like I'm a freshman or I'm a sophomore, and you're like, oh, I'm a junior. And they're like, oh, okay. And so they're like, wait, but I haven't seen your campus. I was like, yeah, I'm a transfer. They're like, oh, from where? And you go Slick, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they have no idea what you're talking about. But I just remember like it was literally 2 days before, and I went on campus. I found where my classes were. I like downloaded the app, and I was like, okay, I'm just not willing to get lost, because the one thing that I'm really good at is getting lost. And so thankfully I found like with the direction of like the parking lot to my business building, and I was like, perfect. Like that's all I really got to know.
Thank you. Brittany, do you want to share?
So I was feeling a little scared, anxious, nervous, and a little overwhelmed. Going to a big university was intimidating for me. At Slick, I loved the smaller classes and it was more affordable. So during my last year at Slick, my main concerns before transferring to the U were like, one, how will I do in classes with students of 100 or more? Like, would bigger classes make it harder for me to receive help from my instructor? And a big one was, how was I going to pay for school knowing classes at the U were more expensive? And so I took an 8-year break after graduating from Slick, but initially I intended on transferring to the U right after my last semester at Slick. I applied and I was accepted. I attended orientation, and during orientation, we talked about classes and lower division courses I needed for my major. I was still worried about paying for my classes, so I looked up classes offered at Slick and saw that it was the same, that they had the same courses. So I took a chance and enrolled into another semester at Slick. Come to find out that classes that I enrolled in, that financial aid wouldn't cover for them unless I was working towards another degree at Slick. So I withdrew from my classes, and it was already too late to enroll at the U. And so after that, I felt a little discouraged. And that was actually the start of my 8-year break. Through those 8 years, I had always wanted to go back to school, but my family was growing and I never felt like I was in a position where I could afford college and raise a family. And so reapplying to the U after 8 years, the concerns on top of my previous concerns were, how was I going to study and do homework while being a mom and having outside responsibilities? Will it be hard for me to get into a routine? And will my old study habits at Slick be effective at the U? And so to answer that last part of your question, to prepare for my first semester at the U, I applied for FAFSA and other grants for moms going back to school, and I coordinated with family members to watch my girls while I had class. I also had to like mentally prepare myself for the load of being a full-time student, the demands of being a mother of 3 young children and having outside responsibilities. I bought a planner specifically for school so I can plan out all my assignments and exams through the semester. And I planned ahead for time that I needed to work on these assignments or study for them. And then I also printed out each class syllabus and made sure I was aware of instructors' office hours, extra credit that was offered, and big class projects.
Thank you, Brittany. I really appreciate you sharing that. So for our next question, kind of after you transferred to the U, what was the biggest change or surprise during your first semester? And I think Emily transferred the most recently, so we'll start with her.
Yeah, so it was almost like a culture shock for me, honestly. Like going into campus, like it's definitely going to be bigger. I kind of anticipated that, but I think getting into like the class, like your first class, I had at least over 140 students versus like my biggest class that I've ever had at Slick was maybe like 35 students at most. And that was like at capacity. And so sitting in that room with like a bunch of students, I was just kind of like, this is kind of strange. And then I was like wondering how this is going to work because me thinking I was like, oh yeah, it's kind of be sort of like Slick, but like maybe even more. And I remember sitting in my first lecture and my professor just started reading off the slides and that was like the whole class. And then we were done. They're like, hey guys, do you have homework? And we're like, great. And I was like, what just happened? So that was definitely different in terms of like the classes that I took mostly, sometimes they did have a PowerPoint. We did have like a structured class, but at the same time, it's like they were talking about we would go into the content, they would ask us questions related to that. But then they would also start us to think of like, okay, how could this apply to like a job? Or how could this apply to maybe another class you're taking? And so we would start building connections. And so in my brain, I was like, okay, we're gonna like kind of do the same thing. Like we're gonna like figure out how to make connections. I'm in business school. I'm like, it would make sense to like start thinking about how like this would relate to the business world or just generally. And that's definitely something that didn't happen. So I was like, it was just more like you learn or like pay attention and then just do really well on your exams and quizzes. Like that was kind of it. Another thing was just like, I don't know, at least for me, I've definitely felt like really alone and isolated just because like sometimes in the classroom there'd be like, oh yeah, so like how and I'm using B Corps because that's what I'm familiar with. But like, yeah, in like B Corps 1010, you talked about this. And I was like, what was B Corps 1010? Like that has no relation to what they're talking about. And so sometimes it's like they would make references to like pre-course classes that you have to take before you hop into the new one that we're currently in. And they're talking about like specific professors, specific topics. And I was just like, I'm kind of lost and like, I don't know how it would relate to the class. And so for me, it was just more like trying to catch up with the professor, being like, oh, like you mentioned this, like, what are you talking about? Asking a ton of questions. Also like in our classrooms, like our students, like at least the ones that I sit with, like not a lot of people have much to say. Whereas like, it's like we're sitting instead of at the U where I'm sitting in a classroom full of like 19 to 21-year-olds, I'm sitting in a classroom at Salt Lake Community College from like 15 to like 60-year-olds. And so everyone has like a different part of life and able to contribute. Whereas it's like at the classes at the U, it's just everyone's kind of like at the same spot for the most part. And so there's not like a lot of diversity of like bringing in different outside sources from the classroom.
Thank you for sharing. Will, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think Emily pretty much captured what I was going to say too. Another big change was that I transferred, right at the brunt of COVID. So most of my classes were online, and that was really tough to adjust to, especially because I'm a really social person, and it was hard to find interactions with people when almost everything was over Zoom.
Thanks, Will. Brittany, do you want to add anything?
So after I transferred to the U, I was surprised by the amount of resources available and how easily accessible they are. So the biggest change from Slick to the U for me was like the time I spent in person on campus. It was rare. It's rare that I'm on campus. My classes are online. I can complete my work study duties at home. My meetings with my teachers and other resources are over the phone or on Zoom. And because I'm a busy mom, like that's actually very convenient for me. And so the smooth transition for me was a big surprise.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. So what support services or people helped you most during your first year at the U? Will, do you want to go?
Yeah, so definitely when I came to the U, I was a mentee for the Crimson Mentor program, and that was a huge help. It was super easy because I could just text my mentor. I wouldn't have to, log into my email and everything. And I could ask him basically, anything that I needed help with or advice on, and he could, answer within a few minutes. And that was really great. That was probably the biggest help.
Thank you, Will. Emily, do you want to go?
Yeah, so same thing, like my mentor has really helped me a lot with this semester, like just kind of getting used to it. But I've also was really close with my career services advisor, Marcella Kirstenbach, and I'm so sorry if I like say that wrong, but she's definitely helped me in terms of like not only was she's there like a support and resource for me as like a career service advisor, but also she just helped me navigate of like classes, like talking to your professors and like other resources that are available. And she also helped me like find scholarships, which is really hard for me to find currently, was just like a bunch of transfer scholarships, because it seems like a lot of the scholarships are more tailored toward freshmen, which makes sense. But like for transfer students, it's a little bit difficult to find like specifically transfer scholarships that you don't have to wait a year to take or to apply for. So that was really helpful of what she did to in terms of like making sure like I was taken care of and making sure my transition was smooth.
Thank you, Emily. Brittany?
So it's the same for me. There are many services that helped me during my first year at the U, a big one being the Crimson Mentor Program, and the other was my academic advisors. So I was a mentee for my first semester through the Crimson Mentor Program, and my mentor was also a transfer student from SLIC, and she was extremely resourceful. And in just one Zoom call, she introduced online campus services that she received through the U, including peer-reviewed papers from the Writing Center, tutoring from the Tutoring Center, financial help from the Women's Resource Center, and renting tablets from the Marriott Library. So after meeting with her, I have taken advantage of the majority of these services, and it has helped with my success at the U. After 2 semesters at the U, I became a Crimson Mentor, and it's also been very helpful. Our monthly mentor meetings will sometimes include guest speakers from other programs at the U, and our supervisors are amazing. They are constantly sharing their knowledge about what the U has to offer and genuinely care about students and their success at the U. For my academic advisors, they've made a huge impact. I meet with my academic advisors every couple months for semester planning. And when I tell them I'm a mom, they help me look for different options for online courses. I've told them that I'm interested in law school, so they also recommend classes I should take to fulfill requirements for my degree and also have a relation to legal studies. They recommend certain internship opportunities that will count as elective credit and will also help with my admission into law school. They recommend I reach out to pre-professional counselors and also give the law school a call for advice about the admissions process. So these support services have definitely made me feel more empowered as a student and included in the community.
Thank you, Brittany. I think we already kind of went in a little bit to the next question, which was, how do you make connections and build community once you transfer to the U? So is there anything else you want to add, Brittany, onto that, since you kind of got us going?
Definitely. So I started making connections through the Crimson Mentor Program as a mentor. Through the Crimson Mentor Program, I was able to help other transfer students and parents like myself. I was able to attend transfer workshops and host events through the mentoring program, the most recent one being a virtual self-care night so that mentors and mentees can take a break from studying and refresh for midterms. I love hosting events and I love bringing the community together. I'm also co-hosting events in the future, which include a stationery night for students to refill on stationery items, such as notebooks, pens, pencils, highlighters, and other mentors and I have found that a number of our mentees are parents. So we are also planning a mini carnival that will take place in April. And where I will also be attempting face painting. So in a couple of weeks, I will also be inducted into the Crimson Transfer Honor Society, where I hope to do the same.
Thank you, Brittany. Emily, do you want to go?
Yeah, a lot of it for me was more like, sorry, like wrote notes about it, but a lot of me for was like reaching out. It seems like kind of resources are like thrown at you and they're like, oh yeah, just it's on the syllabus. And you're like, great. So I think like a lot of it, like building connections is like actually following through with that of like, okay, like I'm going to go talk to this person. If someone was like to refer to me, like I'll talk to my professor. I'm like, hey, like, do you have someone in mind that like could help me in this situation? And like that helps me like build a connection with my professor, but at the same time, that like gives me almost like a direct link to talk to another person because I feel like sometimes it's kind of awkward to be like just hop into a resource, well, like I want to say resource like an office, and you're just like, hey, like here, and I have questions, and I'm just like, could you help me? Like, sure, you could do that, but it's nice to just have like a person you can like email to and just being like, hey, like someone referred me to you, and they told me that you're really great at talking about this. So that's helped me build connections, is just following through like the people that have been recommended to me, and then I'll go ahead and talk to them. And a lot of the time I'll just tell that person who told me to who referred me to them, is just like, thank you so much for just bringing that up, because I would have been so lost or didn't know who to talk to or who's the best person for this, because sometimes it's like we'll have resources and there's like advisors for everything, and it's nice for someone to be like, this person is really good for this specific need that I exactly have. And so I'll go ahead and talk to that person because they are going to meet my specific needs. And so just having recommendations, having people, at the university, that is great for people, like not just for transfer students, but I feel like for anyone really, is just to start building connections with people you've already known.
Thank you for that. Do you want to add anything, Will?
Yeah, to add on to what Brittany and Emily said, I think it's great to have all those resources and to, just continue to, this person, which introduces you to this person, and then so on and so forth. And I think that's a great opportunity to have.
Thank you. So I know we have a lot of questions. So one more question before we'll get into audience questions. And so the last question is, what advice do you have for faculty and staff who support transfer students? Emily, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'd love to. The biggest thing for me is that I would feel like every time you're going into a class, like this is your first semester, you're meeting everyone, I would say try to be as like upfront as possible in terms of like, don't be so vague as like, oh yeah, this class that you guys took from this person, like that just doesn't help anybody, at least for transfer students. And so I feel like if you just kind of go in with just saying like nobody knows what you're talking about and you're making a reference to something, just kind of just explain what you're trying to get into. Or like if you're talking about like, oh, what you've learned in the past, I'm like, I've learned a lot in the past, like be a little specific in terms of like, oh yeah, when you covered this, this, and this. Or if someone doesn't remember, like keep it open of like, hey guys, like if you have any questions, like just let me know or email me. Like sometimes I know professors extremely busy. I respect you guys, like everything you do. Like ITA, like 35 people, it's a lot. and so I know you guys are completely busy, but just being like open of like, you guys can talk to me as a professor, because sometimes it's like, sure, go talk to my TA, but I really want to get to know my professor. Just like keep that door open of like, talk to me whenever, like here are my office hours, just show up and like come talk to me about anything or about life. And I feel like that's definitely approachable, where it's like someone's just like, oh, just email me like when you can, I'm a busy person. And I get that, totally get that, that's not for everybody, but like just having that like little door open of just like someone can just kind of stick their foot in the door and be like, hey, how's it going, like I just have some questions. Or just being more like open to that conversation, just because like we're coming into like this new experience of like we know there's a ton of resources, but we may not know how to access those, or we don't know like what resources we could use or what we should use or what would actually be really helpful for us. So those kinds of stuff.
Will, do you want to answer the next one?
Yeah, I agree with Emily. At Slick, I noticed that it was easier to access my professors, to kind of, have one-on-ones and actually walk in on person. But, I get that it's a larger university, you have larger class sizes. And this might sound a little cliche, but just do your best to create, a welcoming environment for transfer students. And I found that one thing that was really helpful for me was, advisors or my mentor would let me know about events going on around campus, even if they were just for free things. It's an opportunity to socialize and meet people and kind of ease into the process.
Thank you. And our first audience question kind of ties into the conversation. So we'll start with that. And that was, what was the most frustrating part of the transition process? And what advice would you give to future students to help their transition process go more smoothly? So Brittany, do you want to start us off with that question?
What advice I would give to transfer students? Wow, I honestly, like I am a firm believer of like the mentoring program, and I feel like it's very impactful. So I would make sure that they are, even help with the process by introducing them or making sure that they're aware of the mentoring program and all of the things that is available for them.
And then is there anything that was kind of a frustration that you haven't shared already?
A frustration for during the transfer process. I can't think of any right now.
Well, that's good to hear. Emily, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah. The frustrating thing, I feel like orientation for me was just, it was a rough. It was it was just more like, okay guys, this is how you like, you're admitted, and here are how you sign up for classes, and then here's a PowerPoint of resources, and then that's it. And so that was kind of like, oh, okay. And so really what I got out of orientation was just how to sign up for classes. But even then, like that was a lot of like process steps to get to sign up for classes. And so for me, what really helped me was just like, again, I just signed up for that mentorship program, and I was like, this is probably like the best resources like that's really going to help me, just because like I just need someone in the inside to like help me navigate how it really is, and not just like, I appreciate faculty and staff and everything, but I feel like sometimes their experience is definitely more academic or more USHE institution versus like now we're starting to think like as a student, it's like, no, this is how you navigate things as a student. And so for me, it's just like having that experience of like appreciating that help, but not really being like explaining of like, hey, when you're going to campus, this is what it's going to be like this is what you should generally see. Like you don't have to go into specifics, but like just saying like, this is how it's going to be when you walk onto campus, all of these things. And so I feel like they mention like, oh, this is just classes, and like, but there's more beyond a class. And so I feel like that was frustrating of like, I wish I had known like what to expect once you get into the University of Utah. Like this is probably like what's going to happen, like not just like process steps like signing for the classes, meeting your advisor, but just knowing what is there and what's available, like class sizes, stuff like that. Because I'm probably, unless you're like super wanting to find out more of this information, you're not going to know like right off the bat. And so just someone telling you is just a helpful reformation of what you're going into.
Thanks. Will?
I would absolutely say to the SLIC advisors to advise transfer students coming to the U to sign up for the mentor program. It was probably the most, helpful resource, as I said earlier. And, it's someone who has gone through this process too, so they know what it's like to be a transfer student and experience all the things you're experiencing.
Thank you. And then we have two questions that are pretty similar, so I want to kind of combine them a little bit. So one is kind of, what do you want professors to know about how to best support transfer students? And then kind of the other question is like, how well prepared have they been? But kind of sorry, I get in trouble speaking here. What do you want your professors to know about how to best support transfer students? So Emily, do you want to go?
Yes. Best way to support, sorry, I'm just like still thinking, but I would say the best way to support is just familiarize like beyond your class and the resources, instead of like pointing out like, hey, there's already resources on the syllabus. Like get familiarized with other resources of like just knowing of like, okay, like I know we have, I don't know, the Dream Center, we have the LGBTQ plus Center, we have all these different amazing centers and we have these resources, but it's like just kind of knowing, being familiar with all these resources. And that way, when a student approaches you, you're able to like name off the bat, like, hey, I know this resource that I think would really help you. And then you could even go a step further and being like, I want, like, I know this person like that you can talk to, like not only like getting familiar with the resources that are at the University of Utah, but also like just know a couple people. Like, I mean, it's a bonus because you get to make friends with a bunch of cool people, but at the same time, it's like you're able to help students who enter into your classroom and you're able to let them know, hey, these are like resources that's specifically towards you, instead of like, no, just look at the syllabus and be like, okay, figure out what works for you, instead of like, no, like start building those connections. I feel like, and I remember seeing a question like helping those who are like not maybe outspoken or maybe who are a little bit quieter. I feel like for, at least for that, I would say like just again keep your door open, because maybe they might not approach you right off the get-go, but just having like, oh, I'm open to have a conversation. If you ever feel lost or confused, like please let me know, because as funny as that sounds, like just saying like if you're lost or confused, I'm immediately going to go towards you, because that's mostly where I'm in that boat, where I'm lost and confused. So just kind of like keeping that approach open, knowing your resources, knowing people in those resources that you can refer the students to.
Thank you. Will, do you want to answer this one?
Yeah, so I think for professors, especially with large classes that have TAs, I think it would be good to kind of talk to them about transfer students too, and just welcoming everybody that, you know, might not have experienced this before.
And for you, Brittany?
So as I was hearing Emily talk, like I totally agree. I feel like professors who are like just keeping their door open and who kind of remain approachable when it comes to students feeling comfortable coming to receive help from them. And so even just, like either telling them and creating awareness around the mentor program, where they're assigned somebody who actually kind of knows them personally about their needs when it comes to going to school and is able to help them, or even just being there and saying like, hey, like if you ever want to meet me, so that we can talk about, personalized options that can help you be successful at this university. I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you. And so Emily alluded to this question that like you all are great students and have taken advantage of a lot of services, which I'm very happy that you have. Kind of what advice do you have for someone who might be her student, who might be a little quieter or a little more hesitant? So Brittany, do you want to continue with that?
Oh, wow, that's a really good question, Paul. I think that I remember talking about it, during the mentor program, how if we aren't receiving like a lot of feedback from our mentees who maybe are just a little shy or are just, busy. And so I think just constantly knowing, like at least just opening your door and just reminding them that you're available and that, hey, all these resources are available, so that they are slowly feeling comfortable to approach you, and really just addressing and addressing and going at it where you're someone that they can turn to when that opportunity does come up where they would need something.
Thank you. Will, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah, adding on to what Brittany said, I think it's a good idea to, keep your door open and add, a face to the name. So they